Welcome back to Working Man's Pod. Dave, it's been a hot minute since we've had some fresh new content for the masses.
That's true, but the hiatus is over. The writer strike is allegedly over
Is
today
it?
as we record this. I think it just ended like 2 hours ago. Yeah.
Wow, great
They've got
news.
like a tentative agreement in place.
Okay.
And with that, our strike is over. My strike. So we're back, baby.
We're back, baby. All right. So today's episode, if you are unfamiliar with this type of episode, it's called WP in 30, also known as WP in 3D, because this video is going up onto YouTube. So if you're joining us on YouTube, thank you and hello. I'll give you a little wave. Um, you are seeing Dave joining you live from South Carolina. I'm joining you live from my bed in Durham, North Carolina. And we're here chatting with you today about Aoxomoxoa. We're going to spend 30 minutes or so talking about the album, the music on it, and kind of its legacy. So, Dave, anything before we dive in?
Nothing. Let's talk about album three.
Album three. So, we have gone on Dead's first two albums, San Francisco's Grateful Dead and Anthem of the Sun already. Go back and check those episodes out from January and April. So this is our third in the album series. And I'm really excited about this one. I have really enjoyed kind of diving deep on all three of the albums so far, but I'm going to start off with this take. I think this is my favorite album so far.
Yeah, I waffle between this and Anthem of the Sun. I love the experimental psychedelic feel of the whole album in Anthem in the Sun, but Aoxomoxoa's peaks are way higher.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's three songs that I keep coming back to here that I'm like, these are the best things they've put on wax so far.
I'm
But as a
excited to hear what
whole,
those three
start to
are.
finish, I found myself enjoying Anthem of the Sun a tiny bit more.
Okay, that's fair. So this album came out originally in 1969. So as we usually do, let's talk about that year in music when reviewed from 2023. So probably the two most famous events both involve the dead. You have Woodstock in August and you have Altamont in December. So I think that in the cultural zeitgeist, maybe especially until 2 years ago when Get Back, the documentary, came out and the Beatles rooftop concert, I think, regained a head of steam in the zeitgeist. I think that those were probably the two most famous events in music. And then the Beatles ending would be, I guess probably that would be even bigger than both, or maybe not than Woodstock, but that's a pretty damn big one. It's just that that one didn't have like a big dramatic ending in as much as it just kind of petered out after that album came out. So, you can debate it one way or the other, but either way, the Dead were involved in two massive events in music history this year. Both happened after this album came out. The album was released on June 20th of 69. Woodstock was in August and Altamont was in December. So that was in their future later in the year before this happened. Bands that were formed in 1969, not formed, but Led Zeppelin 1 was released in 1969. So Led Zeppelin came onto the scene in this year for sure. The Jackson 5 were founded in 1969.
Ooh.
Yeah, Hall and Oates. That one surprised
Hmm.
me. I think of
Yeah,
them
that is
as,
surprising.
yeah, they're like in my mind a total 80s band, but they
Yep.
were formed in 69. Hot Tuna was formed in 1969. Kraftwerk, Little Feat, and ZZ Top all formed
Oh,
in 1969. So, a year that is, I think, if you were to poll 100 people in the Mall of America for an answer on Family Feud about what do you think of when you think of hippies, 1969 would be very close to the top of the list because of Woodstock. Um,
yeah.
and you can tell that like the kind of most famous quote unquote hippie bands were already going by 1969, but they were kind of hitting their steam, and it was a different genre that was coming to form at that point. Kraftwerk, they're kind of their own thing and a big predecessor of kind of synth rock and um, you know they call it krautrock, but also bands like Depeche Mode, and then after them, Nine Inch Nails. ZZ Top, kind of also their own thing, but they've got a little bit more of that almonds like Southern fried rock going on.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree
Um,
with that.
yeah, so interesting bands that were formed in that year. The top Billboard album of the year, interestingly, was Iron Butterfly. Iron Butterfly, excuse me, their album Inagata Devita. Interestingly, it was never the number one album in like a month. It just over
That's
the course of,
strange.
I know, over the course of the year, it just kept doing good business over and over and over again. And so at the end of the year, when they counted the albums, that was number one. You probably know the titular song off that album and no other songs from it. That
Okay.
song, Inagata Davida. You don't know it?
Maybe.
Classic
I
rock radio staple.
okay.
So you've certainly heard it, even if you've forgotten it.
Okay.
Top songs of the year are, I don't want to say weird, but divergent. Number
Hmm.
one song of the year, The Fifth Dimension, Aquarius slash Let the Sun Shine In, The Dawning of the Age of Aquarius. It's the
Oh
song
yeah,
that's
yeah,
at the
yeah.
end of The 40-Year-Old Virgin. There's like a dance montage to this song,
Okay.
weirdly. So that was the number one song in the land. Very kind of free spirited and hippie-ish, I would say. Um, Next song is the Archies, Sugar Sugar, which feels like it's from a different
Oh,
era altogether. What do you
yeah. I would have
think?
guessed early 60s for that song.
Me too. And then the next two in the top five that I noted were the Stones, Honky Tonk Woman.
Hmm.
That sounds like 69 to me. And of course, the Beatles, Get Back.
Yeah.
Great song. So interesting year in music. A lot going on. I think that Woodstock is and the Beatles ending are the two things that people mostly think about. But a great year for the Dead. I mean, we've talked about a bunch of their shows. Well, not a bunch, but a good handful of shows from them in '69. They were playing a ton of live music, and they also found time to record a lot of this album in '69. So let's talk about this album. It was released, as I said, on June 20th of 1969 by Warner Brothers Records. It is 8 tracks and 36 minutes long. It's tight. It was recorded between September of 68 and March of 69 at Pacific Recording in San Mateo and, coincidentally, Pacific High Recording in San Francisco. So one word separates the names of the two places that they were recording this. This was an in-house production. When you look at the production credits, you have a lot of very familiar names. Betty Cantor, Dan Healy, Bob Matthews, Owsley Stanley, and Ron Wickersham are credited on the tech, the ones who are doing all of the engineering. So stark contrast from their first two albums, and especially from Anthem of the Sun, where they had, as we talked about in that episode, well discussed difficulties with the recording producer. So this time they tried it by themselves. I think that Joe Smith and the Warner Brothers people were okay with that. They were like, fine, just go off and do it yourselves. We're not going to worry about it. Um, I think that the thing that stands out to me about this album the most is that all of the songs are Hunter Garcia songs. This,
Yes.
yeah. So St. Stephen, Phil Lesh received a co-writing credit, but the others are all Jerry Garcia and Robert Hunter. This was their first album with Bob Hunter as like a member of the band, as their in-house writer. Also, the only Grateful Dead album with Tom Constantin as a full member of the band. He appears on Anthem of the Sun, and he was gone from the band by the time Working Man's Dead. I really almost just said Working Man's Pod came out as their next full-on studio John. So this was the TC era. We also discovered that it was one of the first rock albums recorded using 16-track technology, which Ampex released in early 1969. So the band had already recorded the entire album and they scrapped all of it and went back and re-recorded it all as on 16 tracks so that they could get more of that nuance, more of those layers, and get each, different piece of the music recorded on its own track, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I've got a quote from Bill Kreutzmann about that decision. Quote, the decision was made to toss everything we had already done and record it all again from scratch. This time we could go deeper and experiment with things no other band had done yet. Being able to utilize twice as many tracks essentially doubled the possibilities of what we could do with each song. The end result was dense and cumbersome in places, and all that studio time cost us a fortune, but we were experimenting on the sonic frontier, exploiting cutting edge technology, end quote.
Very cool. You can feel that in the album. Because there's some tracks on here where they're really kind of pushing the limits, I think.
Yeah. Weirdly, the experimental songs go deep with this like technology, I think. And then I think a lot of the better known songs, it doesn't sound overdone. It doesn't sound like they went too deep in this. Like I'm
Yeah,
thinking about China Cat doesn't sound like
no.
overproduced or like that there's so much going on.
Yeah, I would agree with that. All right. Well, with that being said, we should also talk about the album art because it is fucking wild. Um, I think that we should we should talk about that a little bit. So, why don't we start here, Dave? What does the album art look like to you?
It looks like you're like down in I don't want to say like in the Coliseum, but like you're in at the bottom of an amphitheater kind of looking up and you've got this skull and these trippy trees and plants like around you looking down on you watching you. What does it look like to you?
To me, it looks like a very phallic skeleton ejaculating into a an ovary sun. That's what it looks like to me.
Yes. Okay. Yep.
Um, so take that for what you will. It is very interesting album artwork, though. I definitely think that that is the case. It's pretty wild. Rolling Stone also in 1991 selected this album artwork as the eighth best album cover of all time. So they agreed that this is some pretty wild stuff.
Yeah,
um,
that feels high. I'm gonna say it. I don't know that I don't know that I would rank this album cover above Anthem of the Sun,
I
let
don't,
alone many other pieces of music.
yeah, I think American Beauty is their best album artwork for my money, and take that for a grain of salt. The art is so subjective, whether it's listening to music or looking at artwork. But for me, that's the one that I think is the most interesting. Um, but I should say the title of the album, it's a palindrome, excuse me, and it was created by the cover artist Rick Griffin and Bob Hunter. So, yeah, they didn't really. There's a great part in the Long Strange Trip documentary where Mickey Hart pronounces it, and he's like Oxomoxoa. I don't know why it's that hard. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a palindrome. And so no deep meaning here. It's just a cool sounding palindrome, which I think is reason enough, you know. So, anyways, let's get into the music. That's really what we're here about.
Hmm.
All right, so the album begins with a very familiar late 60s dead track, St. Stephen. This song was played 197 times live between 1968 and 1983. And this is a really great recording of this song.
Yes, I agree. It's a rhythm section standout. It's Phil and Bob like showing off a little bit of what everything they can do. And the one thing I don't like, Jerry's like mixed a little quietly. Like Jerry's guitar is not overpowering in your ears, but it's a good version of Saint Stephen.
So, you saying that I agree with you with what you just said, but you saying that Jerry is mixed low. Did you listen to the 69 mix or the 71 mix?
I listened to the drum roll please. I think it was like the 2013 remaster.
Okay. I don't know which
So
one that is off the
yes,
top of
that's
my
what it
head.
was.
Okay, there's a 2019 remaster where they have both versions. They have the 69 mix remastered
Mm.
and the 71 mix remastered. So, what are we talking about? 69 mix, 71 remix. So, Garcia and Lesh basically second guessed what they had done in 1969, and they went back into the studio in 1971 to remix the album. So they removed some parts of the original release. The choir on Mountains of the Moon was gone. Um, some weird sounds on What's Become of the Baby were gone. Um, there's a fade out in Doing That Rag that's in there.
Mhm.
Also, there's just like the vocals are different and it's the mix is very different. The all of the um musicians sound louder to me. So I listened to both, but I found that I enjoyed the 71 mix more, which is strange. It's not strange. It's just it's interesting to me that I did, because I think a lot of times when artists second guess themselves and change things, it's just not helpful.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
usually doesn't work out so
no.
well.
And you and I, as people who write for a part of our living, I think we can both agree that in a writing project, if you go back and look at something like a year later, you're always going to find things that you would have liked to have changed. But sometimes I
Yes.
question how valuable that actually is, and if it might just be better to go with what you were doing in the moment, leaving that original. Who knows? We'll never know. But um, it's interesting. So I agree with you that in that Jerry's vocals are. Do you mean his guitar or his vocals are mixed low?
I meant his guitar, like his
Oh,
guitar playing sounded a little low. But now that you mention it, um you can like hear the backup is equally loud as him. Now
yeah.
that you mention it on the vocal side.
Mm-hmm. Well, in any case, I think we're both aligned that this is a really good recording. As far as like a song that they played really well live, and that they captured the essence of it in the
Hmm.
studio, even though it's only a 4 minute and 30-second version, they get you there. I love Saint Stephen, as I know you do. And I would definitely submit this to someone and say, like, check this song out. You might like it. As far as like trying to get them into some just good old Grateful Dead songs.
Yeah, I agree with you. A song that I wouldn't really submit to someone checking out the Grateful Dead comes next. Dupree's Diamond Blues. Neither of us are Dupree heads
We're
per
not.
se.
We're on the record
Um,
as not Dupree heads, but I'm about to shock you, Dave.
oh,
This is the
please.
song that was stuck in my head for the last week and a half as we were getting ready for this. And
Huh.
I don't question how these things happen. I just accept them. Um, I
Could it be that the standout acoustic guitar work is what captured it in your mind?
It's great. The guitar playing is wonderful. It's so
Yeah, that
clangy,
was the high that
and
was the high point for me.
yeah. Phil's bass is also nice. You can't hear it super clearly, but in the beginning of the song, it's great. He's really taking it for a walk in the beginning. But also just like the organ sounds are pretty good. Like they are kind of fun and like almost ice cream truckish to me. That's just like got that little bit of a bounce to it. Or like a baseball organ, like you could picture it maybe at Wrigley Field.
Yes.
Now,
Okay.
so I have been on the record. The like weird, I guess the metaphor in this song, jelly roll. I just don't like it. This song makes me feel icky usually when I hear it. Um, but it is a well told story. You can really conjure the image of what's going on when you hear the lyrics. Obviously, Robert Hunter was great at that. And yeah, this song was just in my head this whole time that I was playing. It made me question how much I actually like or dislike this song. But I also question how much the Deadlights are disliked it, because they only played it 82 times. Mostly in 69 when they were playing it live. Then they brought it back in 77 for a bit. 82 to 90, they played it sporadically, and then two final versions to punctuate its history in 1994. So they didn't play it very much. But amazingly, this is the third most played song from this album.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's wild. What else, do you have anything else on Dupree before we move on to Rosemary?
Yeah, well, just my critique of the song was that this song couldn't really decide if it was going to be a folk song, a country song, or a blues song, which I think 9 times out of 10 would be a good thing. Like if the Grateful Dead aren't boxing into any one genre, they're kind of forming an identity of a song. And yet nothing about this stood out as like an identity forming statement. It was just kind of there for me and like different enough to be different, but not good enough to be stuck in my head for the last week and a half, unlike
Okay,
you.
fair enough. Okay, next song, Rosemary. I did not know what to make of this song. They only played it live once. So for
Wow.
the deep live deadheads who have not really gotten into their studio records, um you wouldn't even know that this song existed. For a long time, it was believed that they had never played it live. But eventually, and I'm not sure exactly when, this performance emerged from the annals of history. December 7th, 1968, they played it at Bellarmine College in Louisville, Kentucky.
Mm.
So Yeah, i- interesting. They didn't use the voice filter that they have on the studio version. I'm not sure how they would have done that live anyways, but yeah, it's interesting. That definitely sounds quite different. Um, and yeah, I don't know what else about this song, Dave. What did you think about it?
The guitar work is nice and sweet. It was not my favorite acoustic experimental song on this side of the record.
Not even on
That's
this
coming
side of
up
the
later.
record. Okay.
Yeah.
The live version is like 5 minutes long, and I saw
Oh,
some speculation because the version on the album is like less than 2 minutes.
yeah. I was gonna say
There
it's
was
pretty short.
Yeah, there was speculation that it was just meant to be a fragment of a song, and then they were basically just like, well, this album without this is like 34 minutes long, so let's just add it in and take up some more space on the A side. I'm
Hmm.
saying that in like an almost dismissive way. I don't mean it like that. It's just like, hey, this is an interesting thing that we've created. Why not include it on the album too? So a lot of also speculation about what the meaning of the song is, kind of where it came from. Um, there's I don't know. It's interesting. There's talk about the song, the secret, or sorry, the novel, The Secret Garden, that was then made into a film. That it might be a reference to that. Not sure. To me, what I kept thinking of was the movie Rosemary's Baby. Sorry, that came out in 1968, a year before this. And you have this song, Rosemary, and then on the B side you have What's Become of the Baby. Um, Rose
Oh, piecing it
Rosemary's
together there. Yeah.
Yeah, it might be a stretch. Rosemary's Baby is one of the early, very famous horror movies, and Jerry Garcia, a known horror head. So I don't know. That's my theory. I'm sticking to it.
Okay.
All right, let's keep it moving. Next up is Doing That Rag. This song was only played 43 times live. I think we've talked about two of them, all in 1969. And I actually dig this song. So
I love this song. This versions. I love this studio version.
it rules.
This was the one that was stuck in my head for the last week. Yeah, it's great. It's tough to say this is the peak of the album because side B is still coming, but
Mhm.
this this puts itself in contention. I
Yeah.
loved Pigpen's organ on this song.
I was wondering if it was Pigpen's organ or if it was TC. It's hard. It's maybe impossible to tell. I have no idea. It
Yeah, I
seems like
don't
it
know.
would be Pigpen though, because
I would imagine it is
Tompkins.
because
Sorry, go ahead.
Tompkinson's credited with keys,
Mm-hmm.
and then like on Saint Stephen and I think one other song, there's like a distinct piano. Whereas on like China Cat and this song, and I think Dupree's, there's like a distinct organ.
Yes, yes. I think, and that's consistent with what they were doing live at this time. Pigpen would play the organ parts, and TC would play the keys and the piano parts. So I think so too. But yeah, great song. I think that this is my high point of the album. Um,
Yeah,
so
man, it, everything about it just works so well.
It's true. And it's also the longest song on this side. It's almost 5 minutes long. They stretch it out and they make for just a really nice tune. Any shout outs that you want to give to any of the individual performers aside from Pigpen on this song?
Aside from Pigpen, oh, the drumming.
Yeah.
Yeah, the drumming, I think it's the high point of that whole album.
The whole rhythm, I mean, because Phil also, it's his bass is sparse, but it sounds great on this song. So yeah, great stuff. Doing that rag. It's a shame that they only played it in 69 because it would have been interesting
Yeah.
to like hear like 80s Dead playing this song. Can you imagine?
Well, like Brent wailing away, like on the
Yeah,
organ, and then him,
could have worked.
yeah.
All right, we got to pick this up. We only got 5 minutes left, Dave. So let's bring this ship home. Next song, Mountains of the Moon. This is the last song on the A side. Another song that they didn't play live very much, only 15 times live, basically all in 69, once in 68. And by the time this album came out, they were basically never going to play it again. After the album
I'm
came out,
shocked they I'm shocked they played it even once.
yeah, well, they did. I don't know why you're shocked. Why are you shocked that they played it once, Dave?
I, well, if they only played Rosemary once, I think the like psychedelic, hypnotic like sound around it would be harder to project live than what was going on in Rosemary.
Yes, absolutely. But this band was never one to shy away from challenge. I mean, come
That's
on, they
fair.
had some of the best audio techs in the world at this time, and I'm sure Owsley Stanley was all for trying to recreate this live. I bet it was hard as hell to do though, and that's probably why they
Yeah.
didn't play it very many times.
Yeah.
But I
I,
got to
I
give them
liked
credit for
this
trying.
though.
Yeah, me too.
I liked the song. I thought it was kind of hypnotizing. And
It's a perfect word.
there's a legit fill bomb like around the 2.5 minute time mark that I refuse to believe didn't damage some sort of like acoustic bass amp they had in the studio. Because it like blows out the speakers when you listen to it with headphones on.
Yeah, it's true. And you know what? Good for him for dropping a fill bomb even with the acoustic bass.
Yeah.
No bass and no bass amp is safe from Bombardier Lesh.
Right.
Love it. Okay, so that's the A side. I think that's 5 tracks in total.
Yes. Yep.
The B side is only 3, so it starts with probably the most, no, definitely the most famous song from this album, which is China Cat Sunflower. So this song was played 570 times live. I mean, the most by a factor of 3 compared to St. Stephen. They played it all the way from January 1968 to their penultimate show in 1995. So literally, I mean, until the end of the Grateful Dead, they were playing this song. You know, we've talked about so many different versions from so many different eras. So how did this studio version capture you, Dave?
Really well. I while Saint Stephen is kind of like a shorter version of something that kind of sounded like what they played live.
Yep.
The studio China Cat is like truly a studio version of a song, but
Yes.
in the best way. Like the campy backing vocals and like the over the top, you know, production ads in the background. I
Yep.
loved it. Like it wasn't too I just used the word. It wasn't too campy. It wasn't too cheesy. It was like it was different enough from the live version that it was so clearly a produced studio version, but it didn't go over the top in any
Yeah.
way. Like it didn't ruin the experience for me.
Yeah, I love it too. I love the China Cat. I think that stuff is really cool. The opening riffs on this song from Jerry and then Bobby are just excellent. The way that they capture that in
Mm-hmm.
the studio is great. The one from Bob, especially, it's just like, ooh, Bob, there you
Yeah.
are. Right. And especially when you flip the record and you have that B-side and it just starts right there. It's just great. Also, I think that the lyrics to this song, as far as like the lyrics on this album go, you know, 1969 Woodstock, it's a time of like, it's a high point in like the psychedelic movement. And the lyrics to this song are as psychedelic as anything on this album gets, in my opinion. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
I
it's
agree with
just,
you.
it's pretty wild. I love it. So I thought this was a great version. It's cool to listen to this and then to hear, you know, like where China Cat Sunflower is now, you know, what Bob is
Mm-hmm.
doing with the Wolf Brothers. And it's so different. But yeah, it's cool to see its evolution. All right, 2 more songs and we got to land this plane. What's Become of the Baby? This song they played on stage once, but
I can't believe they played this one either.
I know
Jesus Christ.
this one is the one that it's hard to believe they ever played. But Dave, it was from tape, so they played it over the AV while the band
Okay.
played Space over the top of it.
Okay. That makes more sense because I critiqued this song in 3 words, spoken word space.
Yeah,
That's my analysis of this song.
it's
So
kind
that
of
makes perfect sense.
yes. So that's kind of all we need to say about it, especially because we got to finish this thing up. But I did not find the version where it's playing from tape and they're playing Space over it. But now I really want to and hear what that's all about. All right, last song on the album, Cosmic Charlie. This song they played 45 times live, almost all between 69 and 71. They brought it back for like a month in 60, or excuse me, in 76, but that was it for Cosmic Charlie. What what are your thoughts on this old jam?
My thoughts on this are I didn't know that they had Lennon and Paul and Ringo and George Harrison come in and record a song to end the album. This is a Beatles song, dude. Like it sounds like a Beatles song. The melodic structure is very, very similar to some Beatles songs.
Yeah,
Everything about this is a Beatles song with the exception of Phil's bass near the end, because again, only he could Phil bomb the way he did.
yeah.
Other than that, I was like, wow, was this like a Beatles song that was on the cutting room floor that the studio like had them try out? I know it's not because Garcia and Hunter wrote it, but
Yeah,
like, man,
it is it's great analysis by you. I think even the opening line, it's very evocative of like some Beatles turns of phrase. Cosmic Charlie, how do you do? Like
yeah. And just like the way Garcia's singing it, it sounds like he's trying to impersonate Lennon.
a little bit, yeah. But that the Beatles have so many interesting turns of phrase in their lyrics. I think the "how do you do" is almost like "cuckoo cuckoo" a little bit. Like it's
Yeah.
different. It's obviously not the same at all. But I'm just saying like that type of thing where the Beatles would just they would word things in very interesting ways. That is always captivating to me. Um, and this is a very interesting turn of phrase song with some cool lyrics, and the music is really good. I mean, it's a great way to end the album. As far as it's like sonic, like contemporaries or other song, are there specific songs of the Beatles that it is evocative of to you?
That's what I was trying to think about the last time I listened to it earlier today.
Yeah,
I'm not, I don't think so. I'm sure there are. I'm sure that's why I'm thinking about it like that, because there was
yeah.
probably some melody that kind of matched up, but I can't give you a single one right now.
Okay, fair enough. Well, that is Aoxomoxoa. For me, my favorite of their three albums so far. I really enjoy it from Saint Stephen to Cosmic Charlie. I think that China Cat is a standout on this album, but
Yeah.
I think Doing That Rag takes the title.
Dude, I'm
Um,
I'm with you. Like China Cat obviously, you know, stood the test of time. I wish they had let doing that rag give I wish
Cook,
they gave it a chance. Yeah, let
yeah.
it cook exactly. But yeah, listening to it, I found myself going back to doing that rag.
Well, I hope that all of you out there doing that rag are having a nice time, enjoying yourselves, enjoying the fall weather that we're starting to turn into. Um, Dave and I will be back in a couple weeks. We are going to talk about the famous quote unquote Lake Acid show from Lake Placid, New York in October of 1983. We're going to be right around its 40th anniversary, the same week that
Mm-hmm.
it's coming out. So stay tuned for that in a couple weeks. And in the meantime, we bid you good night.
Good night, good night, and I bid you good night, good night, good night, and I bid you good night, good night, good night. That's it. You got it.